So if last weekend wasn't as action-packed enough as you think, we've got it again this weekend. The Manchester derby, Manchester City versus Manchester United. Going to split them up again into both teams' tactics. If you're turning up here after the game, stay tuned, stick around. Let me know what you think. Let me know whether I'm right or I'm wrong, because I usually try to be right here on Let's Talk Tactics. So we're going to talk about Manchester City first. They have had a rough last couple of games, has to be said, losing to Newcastle in the Capital One Cup and losing to West Ham. And Pellegrini himself has come out and said that they are not in the best run of form going into this game against Manchester United. So it's going to be interesting to see how they will line up against a team that's coming off the back of a 1-1 draw against Chelsea. So this is how they lined up against Newcastle in the last game. A couple of changes in there. So obviously you'd expect Joe Hart to start. Sagna, Demichelis, Mangala, who I thought was very poor against Newcastle. I don't imagine he'll play. I think Company will come back in. Kolarov, and then you've got Milner, Fernandinho, Toure, and Silva, who might be injured, Jovetic and Dzeko. So first point I want to say here is that Aguero is going to come back in, but I do not think that Aguero and Dzeko are clicking at this moment in time, and here's why. I'll show you right here. So when you're playing Aguero and Dzeko at the same time, both of them like to play on the last man, which is surprising because Aguero is smaller and he does hold up the ball as well as a big striker you'd expect. But when you're playing two holding midfielders, Fernandinho and Toure, you need someone to support in there. So not only do you need someone to hold up the ball, but you need a midfield runner to come up and support. And the reason I think that if you play both Dzeko and Aguero, you're not going to get as much support, because when Aguero gets the ball in here, what you need is another striker to make this run and loop in behind, take another defender away and create room for your midfield runners. I don't think Manchester City have been doing that as much, especially against West Ham. I think that Jovetic is a good striker. He is big, but his movement is very good. He moves around Aguero well, and if I was Pellegrini going into this game, the first thing I would do is change and put in a guy like Jovetic, who can play off Aguero and allow Aguero to push up onto that Manchester backline and try and cause them a lot more hassle. So it must be said, first of all, that Manchester United come off of a good 1-1 draw. So here's Manchester City's lineup that they had against Newcastle in the Capital One Cup. Of course, they lost in the True Geordie. Of course, we'll be cheering through that as his team put out Manchester City, the champions, in the Capital One Cup. So obviously, Joe Hart will come in and go back into the net. I think Sagna, Demichelis, and I wasn't impressed with Mangala. Mangala, for being so fast and strong, does not cover well enough. And I thought that he was very susceptible against Newcastle, and I think he's not living up to that price tag at the moment, and I think that they have to bring him back in Company to lead that back line. And then you've got Milner, Fernandinho, Toure, and then Silva, who might be injured, picked up a knock at the start of the game. Pellegrini is hopeful that he'll make a return, but that's going to be a huge loss if he doesn't play. He is the one who links up their midfield and attack. And then when you go up to the strikers, Jovetic and Dzeko. So this is the first thing I want to bring your attention to here. When you play Jovetic and Dzeko, Aguero's going to come back in, that's the first thing I have to say. But Jovetic, as much as he's a big striker, he doesn't play on the last man as much. And that is good if you're playing Aguero, because Aguero's smaller, likes to play in this area here, picks the ball up and tries to be a last man, so he's got that time to turn and shoot. Jovetic is very good at making looping runs. We've seen against Liverpool at the start of the season. He made a lot of looping runs in behind, picked the ball up at the edge of the box and managed to get himself a couple of goals. Dzeko, on the other hand, plays like this, similar to Aguero. They're very square, and with that, you need an attacking midfielder to come up. But with Frank Lampard not in the starting lineup, and you had Fernandinho and Toure, they don't support as much. So if I was Pellegrini, I would go with Aguero and Jovetic, because if you play Aguero right on the last man, you can allow Jovetic to float in this area and pick the ball up in there and allow for these midfielders to catch up. The next point that has to be made against Manchester United is that Manchester United commit numbers going forward, and as we've seen, they've been very useful at using their fullbacks to attack in this area. Imagine that Manchester United were attacking down this side. That is guys like Raphael. Manchester City have to be smart and shuffle their defenders across, because Manchester United have been doing this thing of putting in an early cross, and the way Mangala performed, I don't think he should be up to the task. I think you need Company back in there, because the prime example of Manchester City defending was against Liverpool. They sit really back, really in their own box basically, and that's going to allow for a lot of room for guys like Di Maria and Rooney to pick up the ball. So when guys like Raphael get the ball, they need to push over as a team and kind of keep themselves higher up. We've seen against Bayern Munich, going back a little bit, they dropped into this area, and it allowed for teams like Bayern Munich, who have got a good attacking ability, like Manchester United, to pummel until there's an opening and they can put it in the back of net. But I think Manchester City have got things pretty wrapped up at the back in terms of playing at the Etihad, playing away from home against West Ham is a different story, and I think that they need to wrap that up. But I think if they go a goal up, mark my words here, Chelsea went a goal up against Manchester United and then held back and allowed for Manchester United to come at them and then get that goal towards the end in the last minute to tie it up. Manchester City will not do that. If they get a goal at the Etihad, they won't sit back and they'll push on to Manchester United. It is a derby game. There is going to be a lot of heat flying around, and I think if they get the first goal, I think it will be a game for Manchester City. But it'll be interesting to see. So if you think my predictions are right, if you're coming back and watch this after the game, let me know if I'm wrong and how wrong I am and what you think. And just we want to be more interactive in this and find out your guys' points. So make sure to leave your comments in the section below. Follow us at TYTSports and follow me at Francis_Maxwell. Check out the Manchester United version of Tactics. Thank you.